One Piece. Yes, the anime, more specifically, the One Piece flag, has been making its way into various different protests around the world. And today we're going to be talking about that in today's video. Link to the original videos down in the description below. If you like the commentaries and discussions that we have here on this channel, consider subscribing. Without further ado, let's jump into it.
This is a symbol of warning for the government, so they have to look at their people. When Indonesian mural artist Emas Mohammed Firdaus said this to CNN, he wasn't talking about Molotov cocktails, rifles, or even banners stitched with nationalist slogans. He was talking about a skull and crossbones flag from the Japanese anime One Piece, which in Indonesia has become a rallying cry for protesters who recently took to the streets angry at the exorbitant perks that members of parliament were receiving. And it's not just in Indonesia. All over the world, young people are flying this flag as a symbol of defiance. In Kathmandu, Nepalese Gen Z overthrew a corrupt government and burned down the parliament with the One Piece skull.
And by the way, I think this is really, really cool. To give it like a more symbolic meaning, and the fact that you guys came to conclusion to use that. I just hope that Americans don't start using it for over here, because Americans have a bad tendency of protesting everything while being happy with nothing. So I hope they don't ruin the meaning of it. But this is, to me, if you watch the original video, one of you pointed out in the comments that yes, it was like y'all guys were kind of laughing that I was so shocked and confused. I was really confused because I was like, I know this is the flag from One Piece, but at the same time, I was like, I don't know why I'm seeing it here. I don't want to guess wrong, but I was like, this is really confusing. But I'm glad that that it's something that it's not just a flag. There's something more to it.
Flying overhead. And even in Manila, the flag has been raised during recent anti-corruption protests. So how did this flag transform from a cartoon emblem into an international shorthand for we don't trust the elites, we don't trust the system, and we're ready to chart our own course? And perhaps more importantly, where's it going to be flown next?
Yep.
Okay, now this is a question that we never thought we'd be asking on this channel. Honestly, we figured we'd save this one for Weeb Fronts or something, our totally real spin-off channel where we analyze anime in the same way we usually analyze geopolitics. You're welcome. You know.
Imagine that would actually be kind of cool. Let me know in the comments. Do you guys want me to? Because I've always been looking into other things to talk about in this channel, and it's been really hard because some of the topics are very niche, and others are kind of too broad. Is anime something you guys want me to talk about? I'm just, this is, again, there's no final answer on this, so I'm open to opinions. Again, I'm not an anime expert. I know enough about anime, but I'm not like some, like I'm not going to be able to sit here and give you crazy commentary in regards to it, but I am open to learning. And if you guys want to do the experience, kind of the same experience we have here with learning, I'm cool with that. I'm always open to being informed. Like I think that's one of the greatest things we can do as people is always learn, and I find it fun too. So so that being said, I know it's going to be hard to even just pick an anime to start with. So I would have to, if you guys say yes, maybe we'll make a poll and you guys have to decide on what the anime is first, because I'm not picking, because I know there's just so many, and I'm going to trust. Maybe I guess we could do One Piece, but I know that one's really, really, really long. But I don't want to get into the whole debates of which anime to start with. So let's get back to the video.
Sort of Naruto's foreign policy failures was last week's peace conference, a JoJo reference, that sort of thing. But since a cartoon skull and crossbones flag is suddenly the summer's hottest protest accessory, we think it's necessary to explain what One Piece is for those of you who are not familiar. Wilfred wrote this. I've heard of One Piece, but I don't know what One Piece is. I don't think I've ever seen anime in my life. I'm sorry. At its core, One Piece is a story about a ragtag crew of pirates called the Straw Hat Pirates, led by an eternally optimistic captain, Monkey D. Luffy. And when we say ragtag, we mean it. Luffy's crew...
And I you know what? In a weird way, I kind of relate a lot to Luffy when it comes to being optimistic. I'm very much the same way. I think cynicism is a very, very... toxic thing to have, because it's like if you're trying to fight for change and positivity, it should be for that, for change and positivity, not to do more harm.
Has a reindeer doctor who can transform into a human-animal hybrid, a skeleton who uses music as a weapon, and a swordsman who often fights with 3 swords, 2 in his hands and 1 in his mouth. This is bizarre. Luffy's goal is straightforward. Sail the seas, gather a loyal band of friends, and eventually find the mythical treasure known as the One Piece, which will make him king of the pirates. But behind that straightforward premise is a sprawling epic that has been running since 1997. This is some Simpson shit right here. And has become one of the most popular pieces of fiction ever. It has spawned a global generation of fans and
it has a Netflix adaptation. Actually, I'm not going to give my opinion on it, okay? Because I'm not a One Piece expert. I have seen One Piece, enough of it to know about it, but I'm curious, all right? I don't want y'all arguing in the comments. Y'all be nice to each other. But what do y'all think about the One Piece Netflix adaptation? I want to hear what y'all have to say.
a cultural footprint large enough to rival Western works like Harry Potter or Star Wars. While that may make it sound like an exceptionally popular but run-of-the-mill anime, One Piece has always aspired to tell a deeper story. Luffy and his friends often sail from island to island, liberating inhabitants from their tyrannical rulers. And that's not just on individual islands. Luffy is also fighting against the world government, the overreaching antagonists in the series. On paper, the government exists to maintain peace. In reality, however, it's an authoritarian superstructure that censors history, crushes dissent, and shields the grotesquely wealthy nobility known as the Celestial Dragons from public anger. These dragons live in floating palaces, treat ordinary citizens as disposable, and see slavery as their birthright. And you might be seeing how this might strike a chord with angry youth trapped in countries like Nepal or Indonesia.
Especially, you know what? As we've been covering this region of the world, the amount of corruption I think I've started to really understand over there is awful. Like, I think this is one of the things that I'm trying to understand is like, I guess let me use this as an example. So like in America, obviously, or actually not even America, just the world, there's levels of corruption, right? Corruption exists everywhere, but it's varying degrees. What I think the world needs to understand is what you guys are overcoming is not just individual corruption, right? It's not just here, it's not just there, it's not just there. It's this systemic, bigger animal of corruption that is coming from all these different sides. And I guess that's what I'm trying to say is that the level of corruption isn't so unique to one place and one style. It's that whole area. And I hope the world realizes that these protests are because of you guys wanting to change this. And not just because of like bad living conditions. You know what I mean? Like you're tackling a beast that's much bigger than just one country. And I hope the world understands that in some ways a lot of this is connected. There's a shared struggle that is very, very similar. I hope that makes sense. It's hard to put into words because as somebody who's so new to this and like really as an outsider learning about this and also wanting to be very optimistic, it's very hard to put sometimes the severity of things, the severity of things without being too negative, because I do want to be positive for the most part, because I think what y'all are doing is real change. And like I said, regardless of the topics we talk about, whether they're good or bad, I still think that you guys can do it. Do what Gen Z has shown, okay, to be leaders consistently, well, as we talk about Nepal and Indonesia, right? So it's not just one place where Gen Z takes the lead, and then we see older generations and even, like we see different age groups now coming in. So I am very hopeful, and I think you guys can take the beast on. I hate using the beast, but you know what I mean, like or the dragons. You guys can slay the dragons.
with high unemployment, low wages, and an elite who openly and in
Not slay the dragons, but defeat them.
the case of Indonesian MP Ahmad Saroni, call protesters against their rule the dumbest people on earth. Not that it's only One Piece's overshadowing story that touches a nerve with protesters, there's also the way Luffy deals with his fictional world's craven elite. In one of the show's most enduring scenes, Luffy encounters a celestial dragon, Saint Charlos, at a slave auction where Charlos is attempting to buy and enslave a mermaid, Cammy. When one of Luffy's allies, the fishman Hatchin, tries to intervene, Charlos casually shoots him without a second thought, and everyone freezes in fear, demonstrating just how powerful the dragons are. But rather than cower like everyone else, Luffy simply punches Charlos. And there are consequences. Attacking a celestial dragon brings the full weight of the world government crashing down on Luffy and his crew. Admirals, the military's most powerful weapons, are dispatched to hunt them down. The Straw Hats are scattered across the world, separated for 2 years, but the punch reverberates far beyond its immediate aftermath. We don't need to tell you why this scene is so electric, how it shows someone willing to strike back against untouchable power, consequences be damned. For Mateja Kovacic, Associate Professor of Asian Studies at Yonsei University in South Korea, this is why One Piece has become an enduring symbol among protesters. Speaking to New Lines magazine, he said, "They are fighting against the powerful on behalf of the weak." That's what made One Piece popular among Hong Kong protesters too. On the one hand, there's this systemic abuse of power by the elites, and on the other, a group of misfits brought together by the idea of following their own moral compass.
And you know what's crazy? I didn't even know it was in Hong Kong, but like if we even look at what happened with Hong Kong, they were really not wanting to be under China's rule. And it's like we forgot, you know? Like the Free Hong Kong movement is essentially, we haven't talked about it ever since. At least not in America. And it kind of shows you, I think, God, I'm not trying to be like emotional or like I'm not even a part of this, but it's like, as somebody looking on the outside looking in, it really hits you in the heart that it's really just people trying to do the right thing. And then you see instances like in Hong Kong where it doesn't work out. And so it just tells you like, you got to try. You just have to try, because if you don't, these dragons will always, you just won't know, right? Like you got to be the Luffy sometimes, even if you know that the dragon might win. You just have to try. And I think that's kind of breaks your heart, but it's the world we live in, right?
And that idea of a group of misfits banding together is another key reason why One Piece is connecting with young protesters across the world. The Straw Hat Pirates don't have a rigid hierarchy and operate more as a gathering of equals than anything else. This mirrors how modern protest movements actually function. Young protesters have largely rejected traditional hierarchical structures in favor of distributed networks where individuals bring their unique skills to a shared cause. Artists create posters, influencers mobilize their supporters, and coders build apps to track government action. Hence why the Straw Hats flag continues to resonate with protesters worldwide. Young people standing up against injustice through decentralized, leaderless systems see themselves in Luffy and his crew. But understanding why One Piece resonates with protesters, that's only half the story. The more interesting question is how a Japanese pirate manga went from pixels on screens to flags flying over burning streets. The Straw Hats flag has appeared sporadically in protests around the world, but its first widespread use was in Indonesia.
And that's where we saw it, by the way. We saw it in Indonesia. I didn't even realize it was in Hong Kong, but that makes a lot of sense.
Surprisingly, it didn't begin with students storming parliament or activists calling for democracy. It began with truck drivers every year.
That's crazy though. Like think about, like, before we talk about the truck drivers, literally activists just calling for democracy. Like I think this is another thing the West takes so for granted is democracy. The idea, like Americans for sure takes democracy so for granted, right? And it's like, to just even think that you have to have these protests just to have democracy, just to have it. Like think about it. That's crazy. Like it just shows the level of corruption you have to overcome just to get the chance to have democracy.
In the lead up to Indonesia's Independence Day on August the 17th, truck drivers fly the country's flag as a routine display of patriotism, the red and white waving proudly as they traverse the nation. But this year, something changed. Truck drivers around the country began flying the one-piece flag, either in place of or alongside the Indonesian flag, as a protest against the increasingly difficult economic conditions. Rahmat, a local truck driver, told the weekly Indonesian outlet Tempo that he and his colleagues had adopted the flag as a peaceful way to demonstrate. Quoting him here, "This is purely an expression of aspiration. The hope is that the government not only listens, but also provides solutions. Don't let the lower-income population continue to be oppressed." The truckers weren't just protesting the country's declining economy. They were also mad at a new ODOL policy introduced by the government. ODOL, meaning over-dimension overloading, refers to vehicles that have been modified to carry a load heavier than what they were initially meant to. According to the Indonesian government, ODOL increases the risk of accidents and the amount that the state spends on road repairs. The Indonesian Ministry of Public Works and People's Housing estimates that the state has spent more than 43 trillion Indonesian rupees repairing roads damaged by ODOL.
How much is 43 trillion rupees? How much is that?
Trucks. The drivers, on the other hand, often feel they have no choice but to exceed legal weight limits because cargo owners have come to expect it as a standard service. Gemilang Taragan, chairman of the Indonesian Trucking Entrepreneurs Association, told local outlet Berat Satu, and we'll quote him here, "If we tell clients our truck can only carry 10 tons, we get no jobs because others can haul 25 tons and beat us."
And even then, it's like, let's say you own your own truck, right? Because everyone's earning less, it's going to take more to pay that thing back. So you're going to want to take on more work, more tons. Like, it's one of the things, this is the thing about people don't understand about, like, I give you the example in America, there's a lot of low wage labor that's under the table. Like it's essentially off the books, right? The problem is that's very, very, very predatory. That's very, 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 it's meant to trap people on purpose. And so this literally sounds like a version of that, but specifically the truck drivers. Yeah, this is something you absolutely would want to get changed, or at least provide a different solution, right? Or increase the wages across the board so that no one feels like they're trapped in this cycle of having to try to break the rules just to survive.
End quote. The flag quickly spread among Indonesia's trucking community, as chronicled by the Instagram account HKPro78. And soon enough, the flag was all over the country, not just on trucks. Artists like Imas Muhammad painted the straw hat skull in graffiti across the walls of cities. Motorbikes drove past with flags tied to their rear racks, and boats along Indonesia's coasts began raising it on their masts, mirroring the straw hats. The governments, on their part, saw the one-piece flags not as an attempt by a desperate public to communicate with their leaders, but as an affront to the nation. Sufmi Dasko Ahmad, the nation's deputy House Speaker, called it a coordinated attempt to undermine national unity and divide the nation, while another lawmaker even suggested it could be treason.
I think, if I'm being fair here, again, you guys know I love you guys, but I'm always going to be fair. If I'm being fair, I can kind of see that, because of the skull and bones. That's it. But if they feel that this is where I'm also going to be fair. So there's two things here. First, if I were just to see the flag and I didn't know anything about it, maybe, yeah, because typically pirates aren't seen as the good guys. But in this specific instance, if they were that worried, okay, let's use their logic. If they were that worried, they should have at least heard what you had to say, and then they would have quickly realized that you weren't even really, you're asking for very reasonable things, and if anything, are wanting the country to get better. So I see where they can come from that, but just any basic secondary level of research would only prove you to be right. And I think that's where you let me know if this is correct. This is probably why you guys felt even more frustrated, because it's like, no, literally just look into it just a little bit more and you'll see what we're asking you. But instead they chose to ignore you. And it's funny because we see that consistently in Nepal, and we saw that in Indonesia. Now, if we ever talk about other countries in the future, this is something we got to remember, right? Like maybe we need to make a checklist. How much do these people? How much when it comes to corruption? How much do the leaders ignore? Because there's a difference between acknowledging and doing nothing, and then just straight up ignoring. This is a question for you guys. What do you think is worse? When a leader hears what you have to say, does nothing, or when a leader doesn't even try to hear you? I want to see what y'all have to think about that.
This reaction, according to regional observer Farhan Rizkwala, gave power to the symbol. On the publishing platform Medium, he wrote, quote, "By treating a cartoon flag as a threat to national security, they have inadvertently validated the entire premise of the protest."
Exactly. You know what? That's exactly, yeah. Literally, by just listening to what you guys have to say, literally would not have made this a bigger deal. Like they just literally all they had to do was just listen to y'all's demands, and this would have never happened.
They have shown that the dream of Monkey D. Luffy, the simple, unwavering desire to be free, is one thing they truly fear. On the 25th of August, this long-simmering anger against the government culminated in the protests that we alluded to at the start of this piece, against the exorbitant perks that members of parliament were receiving. And the Straw Hats flag was at the center of it. From Indonesia, the flag...
Which, by the way, I've been talking to a lot of my American friends. By the way, they love you guys, by the way. They read y'all's because I read y'all's comments, but some of my American friends also read y'all's comments. And they're very impressed by how informed you guys are, and how like you guys are willing to break things down in a way that other people outsiders can understand. So if you make it this far in the video, I'm just trying to give you all a compliment. You guys do a great job at explaining things, because I know there's a lot to explain and there's like a lot of context to some of these things. So, but I think you guys do a great job at breaking it down to be understood. But that being said, gosh, I already forgot what I was going to say because I was over here giving you guys a compliment. But actually, let me go back. Maybe I'll remember.
That members of parliament were receiving. And the Straw Hats flag...
Oh, that's right. What I was trying to explain to them that is kind of hard to explain. Not hard to explain, but some people weren't getting it, is how how egregious some of these perks, some of the pay that they were getting, right? Because like if we compare that to American money, it's kind of what like an average American makes. But I was trying to tell them, it's like, no, it's not only that they're making more money, it's that they're also taking away money from people. Like there's a difference, right? It's a difference between you and your coworker. Your coworker gets a promotion, right? But you don't. It kind of sucks. It feels bad, but it is what it is. What I was telling them, it's like, no, it's different. These politicians were just straight up taking the money. Straight up taking the money. It's like, it's almost like robbery. It's straight up robbery at that point. You know what I mean? Like, it's corruption or theft. Either one.
Was at the center of it. From Indonesia, the flag went international, appearing next in Nepal among Gen Z protesters, then in the Philippines.
And then you got these Nepo babies over here flexing on the internet, which I didn't even realize it was such a big thing in Southeast Asia. Like, it's such a big thing over there for these people to flex like that. Like, I understand, like, if you're wealthy, you want to post or whatever, but to do it out of spite, to do it to hurt the feelings of poor people or people who are trapped. I hate saying the word poor people because it's like you're trapped. You're trapped in a situation it's hard that you have to change, right? So it's really not your fault. But the thing is, it's like, imagine that. That's crazy to me. That's just crazy because in America, no one would really do that. I mean, people flex money all the time, but it's like, imagine a government politician flexing on his own voters. That person would never win again. Like, that's just crazy to me. Okay, this is another thing. I haven't seen the movie Crazy Rich Asians, but is it based on Singapore? Because it would make sense because that's Southeast Asia. So I don't know, but I didn't realize how crazy it was, these Nepo babies, which let me know in the comments if we should talk about it in a video. Because it's kind of insane to me. It blew my mind how awful some of these Nepo babies are.
It even crossed oceans into France, where protesters angry at the government's planned spending cuts were spotted not just carrying the flag, but also wearing straw hats. To be clear, the impact and extent of these protests has varied wildly. In Nepal, they overthrew the government. In Indonesia, they led to the firing of ministers and major policy changes. In France,
Well, did they actually lead to major policy changes in Indonesia?
they so far have only managed to demonstrate, once again, how locally unpopular Macron is. Still, the use of the flags across these protests underscores a key point. The protesters are from the same generation, have the same or very similar frustrations with their governments, and share a feeling that traditional political channels have failed them.
Which is actually very true, because if we look at it, just look at it at the statistic of anime. I believe anime is one of the most watched things in the world right now, which is crazy to think that in my lifetime, when I was in school, people didn't. Okay, I'm not that old. Chill out, everybody. Slow down before we start talking about how old I am. Right? Point stands. When I was in school, anime was somewhat popular, but it really wasn't. But now it's like the most watched thing in the world, everywhere. So it's something to think about. It makes a lot of sense even at that level, that Gen Z resonates with that. So it's definitely a symbol I think you guys should not just let go. It's definitely uniquely y'all's.
However, even with these similarities, the flag bends, as all symbols do, to reflect the unique experiences of the people waving it. The Straw Hats flag isn't the first anime symbol used to advance a political cause. In 2019, during protests in Chile against austerity, protesters carried signs referencing the same anime that we did at the start, Naruto, as well as other anime such as Attack on Titan. One protester went viral for dressing up as Pikachu, a beloved character from the Pokemon anime, and standing firm in the face of water cannons and pepper spray from the government.
Imagine you're Japanese, right? And you're making all these cute cartoons to then just be symbols of protest in other countries. Like, isn't it? Am I the only one that thinks it's kind of funny? Like, if you're from the Japanese perspective, like, what do the Japanese think about all this? Are they like confused? Are they like, well, I don't know what to do? Like, just let them use it. I don't know. Like, if I was Japanese, I'd be kind of like, dang, okay, you know, it's. Who would have thought, you know?
Her act of cosplay defiance turned into something bigger, as she would eventually be elected to Chile's Constitutional Convention, the body in charge of drafting a new constitution for the country. In Thailand, protesters sang a politically charged parody of the Hamtaro theme song as they demanded the dissolution of parliament. Anime figures also made an appearance in Hong Kong during the anti-extradition bill movement. There, the protesters made reference to a wide variety of anime, from classics such as Doraemon to modern mega hits like Demon Slayer.
Which I wondered, should we talk about Hong Kong? I mean, I don't really know what's going on over there right now. It is kind of heartbreaking that they weren't able to retain some of the things that they wanted to have, but you know, it is what it is, I guess. Like, it's sad, but you know, you can only control so much in your life.
So why is anime such an enduring part of protest culture? Well, according to Matt Holt, author of Pure Invention: How Japan's Pop Culture Conquered the World, it's because anime is often rooted in themes such as freedom of expression. Speaking to New Lines magazine, he said, "Their stories tend to be gleefully distrustful of authority, advocating free thinking and self-actualization, featuring wildly diverse casts, and taking great joy in empowering the weak, the outsiders, the weirdos, the people who don't fit in." The heroic themes and acts in anime often cause their fans to develop parasocial bonds with the characters that influence their personality and behavior. And it's not just anime. Protesters have...
I didn't like the way he worded that. I didn't like the way he worded that. What he's trying to say, though, is that you learn certain qualities from the characters and you adopt those. But that's with any entertainment form. So the way he says it just makes it seem kind of weird. Just makes it seem like you guys are weird. I didn't like the way he said that. That's kind of crazy. Because it's like, imagine if you don't know who Rocky is, he's an Italian, you know, that's Sylvester Stallone character. That's an Italian boxer. A lot of people grew up watching those movies. They're not parasocial of the character, but they learned a lot of strong qualities about hard work. So, and understanding, like, getting up from defeat. So, or trying again. So I just think that, yeah, that this is a separate thing. I just thought that was crazy that he said it like that.
long used other media as a source for symbols. Consider the Guy Fawkes mask,
Oh, this mask means jack shit. It's actually kind of cringe nowadays. Because this mask just is so corny nowadays.
originally worn by children in 17th century England as a reference to the Gunpowder Plot, which was an attempt to blow up the House of Lords. It was resurrected by Alan Moore's V for Vendetta comic and the film adaptation, and became a rallying cry for
Which is a good movie, but now it's kind of like a joke because there's Twitter accounts that claim to be anonymous, but they're not. Which Anonymous is a hacking group.
Anonymous and Occupy Wall Street. Or the song Bella Ciao, originally an anti-Nazi and anti-fascist Italian folk song. It became a pop culture sensation after the Netflix hit Money Heist used it as an anthem and was used in protests across the world, including in the US by pro-choice activists.
That's misleading. It's actually being used by terrorists now. So if you don't know, but at the time of this recording, there was a American civil rights leader that was killed. His name is Charlie Kirk. And on one of the bullet casings that they were going to shoot at him, it said Bella Ciao. So the thing is, it's like, we got to be careful. This guy is being, I don't know if it's obviously the writer. You can tell who the writer is politically based on this writing. But the reality is, some of these symbols have lost their meaning entirely and now actually mean the opposite. Whereas Bella Ciao used to mean anti-fascist, but the people using it mostly nowadays are very fascist. It's very ironic how things turn out.
Even Labubus, the viral doll sensation created by Hong Kong illustrator Kei Sing Lung, have appeared at anti-ICE demonstrations in Los Angeles.
Okay, they're just doing that for content. They're just being corny. They're being funny. Like, I wouldn't look that deep into it. This is the thing about American sayings. Don't take American protests seriously. For the most part, because the Americans are just so out of touch with reality. Like the example of Charlie Kirk. This guy advocated for discussions and free speech and just being able to talk to people you don't agree with. But the people who claim to be anti-fascist, you would think anti-fascism is conversation, right? Being able to talk about your ideas freely and not be punished for them. But this Antifa group, this anti-fascist group, killed a guy who wants free speech. Like, imagine, that's fascism. That's literally fascism. And then they shot him in the throat, of all things, to be symbolic. Isn't that crazy? So that's why when it comes to these groups in America, be very skeptical. Be very, very skeptical. I am going to say this every time. Be very skeptical of these groups. They can be very, very malicious and misleading on purpose. Anytime you hear someone say anti-fascist in America, be very careful, because 9 times out of 10, they're actually pro-fascist, or they behave very fascist-like. And the example is Charlie Kirk.
Such symbols are powerful because they compress complexity into something visceral. They don't require manifestos or party platforms, and in an age when images travel faster than policy papers, symbolism can outpace ideology. There's also the meme factor. Modern protest movements thrive on virality, and something as simple as a lady in a Pikachu costume facing down water cannons can net more eyeballs and generate more sympathy than any statement from a political party. So with all that in mind, what's next for the One Piece flag? Now, if history tells us anything, it's that symbols do not stay put. They migrate, they morph, and sometimes they fade away, only to return in unexpected ways. The Guy Fawkes mask went from Alan Moore's comic pages to the streets of London and New York. Bella Ciao traveled from anti-fascist partisans in Italy to TikTok remixers in the United States. The One Piece flag?
Yeah, but that's even putting it lightly. The exact, like, that's my point, is at least when, again, I know you guys are mostly not American. Please, please, please be very, very cautious of these American these not activists, American protests. They're very, very, because we have a problem with paid protesters. If people are being paid to protest, you need to ask yourself, why are people needing to be paid to do that?
Is now on the same trajectory. It has traveled from the pages drawn by Eiichiro Oda to the streets of Kathmandu, Jakarta, and Paris. Anywhere with the same ingredients as Indonesia and Nepal, a massive youth population that doesn't have enough jobs or opportunities to succeed, or a country where the elite feel like they are above the ordinary people, or anywhere.
Or even just like, I don't know if he's gonna mention this, but like the fact that you guys, like, if you want a democracy, it's hard to get it. Like, really get democracy. I mean, obviously you guys have democratic countries, but like to really have it be consistent is what I'm talking about.
Government feels like they can control the internet like a light switch. That is a lot of countries. And as the summer of 2025 has proven, they can be anywhere from Asia to sub-Saharan Africa and even Europe. In Africa, our instinct tells us that Nigeria is a good candidate to be next. The country's unemployment rate is officially at 4.3%, but according to journalist Dwayne Mabachu, this doesn't tell the full story. Chronic unemployment and lack of wages are still a significant issue for the youth, who constantly express their dissatisfaction with the government on the internet. In Asia, Bangladesh, recently a victim of protests that toppled the government of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, might be next.
But the thing is too, like when we talk about African countries, some of these countries rely on government aid from other countries. So like, imagine, I don't have the list in front of me, but like imagine you're a country who's getting a bunch of free money, by the way, free money from the United States to help your country get better, but then you never see any of it. That's the level of corruption that some of these African countries are getting. And because they're still so poor, it's like because they're still so poor, it's if they don't receive any money, then that country is going to be essentially collapse. So it's like this weird corruption trap that if any country even tries to help, some of these African countries, they get trapped into helping. So it's crazy over there. It's really crazy, and that's not even touching on the bad loans that China's giving out to people to essentially land grab. You got to be careful with those. Please, please, please be careful with those, because you like they're basically scooping up land without even having to do anything.
While the previous protests quelled much of the people's anger, the country is still in crisis. GDP growth is forecasted to fall to a 36-year low. Private investment has plummeted, inflation remains stubbornly high, and the national debt is mounting at an unsustainable rate. These are all ingredients for a potent street movement, and in Europe, the protests we saw in France could potentially be mirrored in Spain, where, according to Trading Economics, the unemployment rate rose to 11.36% in the first quarter of 2025.
Which, by the way, in Europe, what's happening with these, so for those who don't know, why is it Europe struggling right now economically? Not every European country is, but what we're seeing is what's happening is, okay, when you have mass migration come into these smaller countries that are more compact, what these countries are falling into is they're bringing these migrants in who are taking these low-paying jobs, right? So now these jobs are no longer available to the local population. But then on top of that, because they migrated there, a lot of these countries have government programs. So not only are they getting paid, they're taking jobs, and now the people with no jobs now have to pay more money to support the people taking their jobs. Isn't that crazy? So it's like this, it's almost like, not to sound mean, but it's like creating a bunch of leeches, sucking the life out of your country, but then you have to keep feeding it blood because, or like you have to, that's just how the country is. And so and on top of that, they're having to spend more money on defense because of what's going on with Russia. So it's like, where's this money going to come from? And that's one of the reasons, by the way, America has been like, yo, you guys need to figure y'all shit out. We're going to try to take a step back from overly helping you guys, because you clearly don't, the last 8 years haven't been trying to actually do what's best for your own people, not for us, for your own people. So I don't know if Europe is corruption. Like, it's hard to tell, right? So if you're asking me, well, GATO, is it corruption that they're dealing with? I don't know. I think maybe. Here's why. Here, let me give you an example. Maybe in some places, but not others. So like, look at Poland. We talk about Poland here on this channel. I really love Poland. I hope to visit there. They don't really have that economic issue. They're actually thriving a lot right now. But that's because they haven't suffered the effects of mass migration. But they're not the wealthiest country in that area. You see what I'm saying? So it kind of makes you wonder. But then you got situations where, like, for example, Germany is really going down pretty pretty badly, but they also, you can argue that they were corrupt because they were incentivizing this mass migration, even though it's going to hurt the country. And then they were also buying oil from Russia, who was already going to plan to invade Ukraine and the rest of Europe. So, you know, you got countries who are like purposely creating problems. And then you have others who are like, we just don't want to do what you guys are doing. We're going to protect our own people. So it's like, I don't know. It's hard to say if it's corruption over there. I would like to think that sometimes it's just people not knowing how to do their jobs, because there's a saying is don't attribute malice to what is gross incompetence. Essentially, don't think someone's doing it to be evil when it could just be that they're really bad at their job. But we'll see. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe we'll see the one piece flag in some of these countries.
And the people recently took to the streets accusing the government of Socialist Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez of corruption. Of course,
it could be. I mean, look, I would have to. Maybe you guys in the comments probably know more about this, but it's hard to tell because there's just so many different instances. But what we are seeing across the board is a moving away from all these welfare programs from the radical left, these socialist ideas, these communist ideas, because it's showing historically, not even just now, that all these these programs are being exploited to pocket money. So, not saying that like they can't be good, but I think a lot of the world is rejecting that. So maybe it is. Maybe it's just, you know what? Maybe you guys are right. Maybe it is just that a lot of countries have just let corruption take over and then just don't have the means to fix it. So I don't know. But that's why democracy is important because you can always vote to change what you need to change. But let's see.
of course, these are all just predictions. We don't have a crystal ball, and it's entirely possible that none of the three nations we highlighted will see the flag of the Straw Hat Pirates flying above their streets. But the broader point is that these protests are unlikely to be contained to Nepal and Indonesia. So the real answer to what's next isn't a single country or a single protest, but rather the whole world as a younger generation
I honestly think Gen Z is really going to fix a lot of the world's problems. I, as a millennial, thought we would, but no offense to American, you know what? Actually, full offense to American millennials. I can't stand American millennials. We're so stupid. We're some of the dumbest people on the planet. We're dumber than the people before us, and we're dumber than the people after us. I don't know why. Don't get me started. I'm not going to rant about millennials in America. They get on my nerves. And if you think they're a lot like me, no, I'm definitely an exception. I've been told that. The fact that I like learning and like really trying to be thorough and really understanding what you guys have to say is very rare amongst millennials in America. They like being in their bubbles. But I will say this to end on a good note. Like I said it before, and I say it again. If you guys are, if your heart is really in it and you guys are really there for positive change and to do good, I think no matter where the flag is raised, I think you can do it. I truly believe you can. And I've said it before, I've also been inspired by you guys. And maybe I need to get me a one-piece flag. I'll put it back there above the dog bed. So anyway, love you guys. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this. I'll check you on the next one. Be safe out there. Bye-bye. This video is brought to you actually by viewers like you. Thank you so much for subscribing and being part of my journey and allowing me to be a part of yours. Let's create new memories this 2025 on our road to 1 million subscribers. And with all that jazz out of the way, I just want to say thank you so much. I love y'all and enjoy the video.